Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm so glad you're here. Now, this week's theme is God gives me emotions. So every emotion that we have is a gift from God. And our memory verse goes right along with it. Are you ready to do it with me? Okay. God created humans in his own image. He created them to be like himself. Genesis 1:27. Let's do it one more time. God created humans in his own image. He created them like himself. Genesis 1:27. Excellent job. Now, yesterday we read a story about being grumpy. We talked about how all of our emotions, no matter what they are, angry, sad, frustrated, silly, happy, joyful, all of those are good things. There is nothing wrong with feeling any of those emotions because they are straight from God. God created us in his image. So we are in fact a reflection of God. And that means even when we are so angry, we want to do lots of bad things, the emotion itself is not a problem. The emotion itself is not wrong. It's what we do in reaction to those emotions that gets us into trouble and can cause us to do harm to other people, whether it's through words or actions. And so that's what we're talking about this week. We're talking about how to take those emotions and express them in healthy ways so that we don't get into trouble, so that we don't hurt people's feelings, and so that we reflect the way that God gave us those emotions. So, today we are going to be talking about a Bible story, and this Bible story goes all the way back to the beginning in Genesis. And it's after God created everything, and it's probably the first time in the Bible that God is ever sad. So, I want you to get nice and comfy and cozy. If you have your Bible, you can join along with me. I'm going to be reading from the Jesus Storybook Bible, and I'm going to be reading the story of Adam and Eve. You probably already guessed it, right? So, if you have your Bible, the story of Adam and Eve is in Genesis 3, very close to the beginning of the Bible. Okay, you ready? Let's begin. The terrible lie. Adam and Eve lose everything. Genesis 3. Adam and Eve lived happily together in their beautiful new home, and everything was perfect for a while. Until the day when everything went wrong. God had a horrible enemy. His name was Satan. Satan had once been the most beautiful angel, but didn't want to be just an angel. He wanted to be God. He grew proud and evil and full of hate, and God had to send him out of heaven. Satan was seething with anger and looking for a way to hurt God. He wanted to stop God's plan, stop this love story right there. So he disguised himself as a snake and waited in the garden. Now God had given Adam and Eve only one rule. Don't eat the fruit on that tree, God told them, because if you do, you'll think you know everything. You'll stop trusting me, and then death and sadness and tears will come. You see, God knew if they ate the fruit, they would think they didn't need him, and they would try to make themselves happy without him. But God knew there was no such thing as happiness without him, and life without him wouldn't be a life at all. As soon as the snake saw his chance, he slithered silently up to Eve. Does God really love you? The serpent whispered. If he does, why won't he let you eat this nice, juicy, delicious fruit? Poor you. Perhaps God doesn't want you to be happy. The snake's words hissed into her ears and sunk down deep into her heart like poison. Does God love me? Eve wondered. Suddenly, she didn't know anymore. Just trust me, the serpent whispered. You don't need God. One small taste and that's all. You'll be happier than you could ever dream. Eve picked the fruit and ate some, and Adam ate some too. And a terrible lie came into the world. It would never leave. It would live on in every human heart, whispering to every one of God's children, God doesn't love me. And it wasn't a dream. It was a nightmare. A dove flew from Adam's hand. A deer darted in a thicket. It was as if they were frightened by something. A chill was in the air. Something strange was happening. They had always been naked, but now they felt naked and wrong. And they didn't want anyone to see them, so they hid. Later that evening, as God was taking his walk, he called to them, Children? Usually Adam and Eve loved to hear God's voice and would run to him, but this time they ran away from him and hid in the shadows. Where are you? God called. Hiding, Adam said. We're afraid of you. Did you eat the fruit I told you not to eat? God asked them. Adam said, Eve made me do it. What have you done? God asked. Eve said, The serpent made me do it. And terrible pain came into God's heart. His children hadn't just broken the one rule, they had broken God's heart. They had broken their wonderful relationship with him, and now he knew everything else would break. God's creation would start to unravel and come undone and go wrong. From now on, everything would die, even though it was all supposed to last forever. You see, sin had come into God's perfect world, and it would never leave. God's children would always be running away from him and hiding in the dark. Their hearts would break now and never work properly again. God couldn't let his children live forever, not in such pain, not without him. There was only one way to protect them. You will have to leave the garden now, God told his children, his eyes filling with tears. This is no longer your true home. It's not the place for you anymore. But before they left the garden, God made clothes for his children to cover them. He gently clothed them, and then he sent them away on a long, long journey out of the garden, out of their home. Well, in another story, it would have all been over, and that would have been the end. But not in this story. God loved his children too much to let the story end there. Even though he knew he would suffer, God had a plan, a magnificent dream. One day he would get his children back. One day he would make the world their perfect home again. And one day he would wipe away every tear from their eyes. You see, no matter what, in spite of everything, God would love his children with a never-stopping, never-giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love. And though they would forget him and run from him, deep in their hearts, God's children would miss him always and long for him, lost children yearning for their home. Before they left the garden, God whispered a promise to Adam and Eve. It will not always be so. I will come to rescue you, and when I do, I'm going to do battle against the snake. I'll get rid of the sin and the dark and the sadness you let in here. I'm coming back for you. And he would. One day, God himself would come. Okay. Sadness. Let's talk about the sadness that is in this story. It's not just from Adam and Eve for having to leave the home, the only home they ever knew, but it's the sadness of God, of having just created this beautiful world and these beautiful beings that were a representation of him, and then to see them break the one rule simply because they had doubt. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, sadness is a complicated emotion, and it can cause you to do some crazy things. Sadness can make you want to lash out and scream, almost like anger, or it can make you want to be by yourself and not want anyone to come around you, make you want to cry, make you feel like no one wants to be around you. Sadness is not wrong. It is not wrong to feel sad. In fact, sometimes it's really healthy to feel sad, especially if you've done something wrong or if you've lost something. Sadness is good. And working through sadness is the way you heal. It's the way you feel better again. But a lot of times we skip that part. We put a Band-Aid over it and think, if I just forget about this, pretend like it's not there, everything will be fine. But it's not true. In order for God to heal that sadness, we have to let it out. But let it out in a healthy way. Let it out by crying. Let it out by sitting down with someone you love, a parent or a friend, and saying, I'm really upset about this. And then trusting that they will be there for you, and that once it is all emptied out, God will be able to come in and start to heal the pieces that are broken. Just like being grumpy or angry, being sad is not wrong. Now, let's talk about doubt really quickly. The reason that Satan, the snake, was able to convince Adam and Eve to take a bite of the fruit was because he gave them doubt. He asked them a question and gave them just a little bit of doubt that God didn't love them. And for a second, they questioned themselves. That's what doubt is. It's when you know something in your heart, you know it's true, but someone tells you it's not. And all of a sudden you think, well, never thought of it that way. Maybe it's not true. And again, just like grumpiness and sadness, doubt, having doubt is not bad. Having doubt encourages you to question. But if instead of questioning and yearning for more, you go the opposite direction like Adam and Eve and believe something that you know nothing about, believe something from a snake that you've just met, by the way, if you go all in without learning all the facts, that's a problem. Having a question inspires you to learn more. So again, doubt is not a wrong emotion, but use it in the right way. Use it to find out more. Use it to ask more questions and ask people that you love and care about and can trust instead of a snake. Never trust a snake, especially if he's telling you that God doesn't love you, because it's just not true. And if you don't believe me, learn more. Ask questions. Look in your Bible. It will give you every answer you need. I hope you enjoyed our Bible story today. I encourage you to read the story of Adam and Eve and think about what it means to break God's heart. That hurts. But even through that, He continues to love us and pursue us and rescue us every day. Have a wonderful day, you guys. I will see you tomorrow.